I believe that Cyrene, March and Mem represent the three paths that are watching over Amphoreus at any given time, March being remembrance, Cyrene being destruction, and Mem being the erudition. To start off with, we have the most simple to justify and explain in my opinion, that being March and the path of remembrance. To go over all the evidence, we must travel back to her companion quest and establish how her connection to the Memoir Keepers and the remembrance were established. In Total Recall, March's companion quest, we're introduced to a messenger of remembrance, someone who is trying to protect March from her own memories. It's established very early that her memories are being hidden from her for a reason. I personally believe that these memories are of her being on Amphoreus and creating it. We also know that the people who hijacked March's ability to remember things are attached to Poet Thule's Pinky or someone of equal power according to Black Swan. All of this leads to the conclusion that March is representing the remembrance path on Amphoreus. Now that I've explained that, it might seem like Cyrene being destruction and Mem being erudition is me trying to make pieces fit where they don't belong. But I think there is enough evidence connecting the two characters to the two other paths, as well as it being a logical answer to where the story could be progressing. Let's start with the character we know the least about but have enough evidence to prove, Cyrene being the destruction. First and foremost, her design shares a few similarities to that of Nanook. Right off the bat, her arms, she wears similar bandages and bindings to Nanook, and they look extremely similar, having the same thickness, the same golden engravings and similar buckles. However, I will concede that Nanook's has much more than Cyrene's. Next is a small detail on Nanook's design, and he has small purple tints on his hair tips and belt chain. While Cyrene doesn't have anything similar that can work backwards, that being an accessory on Nanook directly connects Nanook and her together. We also know Cyrene and Nanook share a few other similarities in terms of the wounds and injuries they suffer from, namely the stab through the chest they both suffer from, Nanook's severed hands, and the fact they both bleed golden blood. When the Flame Reaver stabbed Cyrene in the chest, it looks very similar to the chest wound inflicted on Nanook. Another point of evidence of this being an intentional parallel and not just the way the Flame Reaver kills people is how My Day's death is depicted, stabbed in a very similar way with the sword going through his back and into his chest. That wound, however, is more on the left side than dead center. This is also most curious to me, because why would the Flame Reaver go out of its way to kill Cyrene? She didn't have a core flame at the time, or directly interfere with his plans to our knowledge, but that is a theory for another time. But back to my point, during the Nameless Faces trailer, we see Cyrene reaching out to the Trailblazer, comforting them. However, she herself does not fully appear, only showing her hands, slight bit of her arms, specifically the bound parts, and her face, almost in the exact same places we see Nanook's body when they appear or are otherwise depicted. Finally, I believe when Cyrene first appears in the Vortex of Genesis, we hear the song True from Honkai Impact 3rd, which is her theme. But I think before that, we hear the sounds of something similar to when an Ion appears inside the simulated universe. It's faint, but I think the sound is very similar to when Nanook appears. Finally, we have Mem being the erudition, and the first question that comes to mind is how. Considering Mem has a clear established relationship with Thule and the Remembrance. However, we have an established rule that people can use path to serve different paths or achieve their own goal. Examples of this being the Trailblazer themselves that gains powers from different paths but always serves the Trailblaze, Jingyuan and Fu Shren using erudition to serve the hunt, and Acheron using the path of nihility despite serving no path. Now that the rule has been established and explained, we can now talk about how Mem uses remembrance to serve her path. Since we first met Mem, their goal has been to help the Trailblazer explore and travel, because according to Oronic, we will make the memory of Amphoreus whole. Now, that sounds like a mission someone on the path of remembrance would blindly follow, but Mem does not read like someone who would follow this path blindly. Mem is growing smarter and smarter after every battle and the longer she exists within the world. For example, more people understand her, and in turn, she understands the world a lot more. I feel as though her character really shows this in the most recent chapter quest, and after we ascended the Time Trail. We see Mem in the Grove of Epiphany reading a book on divination, as well as showcasing her general interest in books. From fairy tale she borrows off Castor to the book of divination mentioned earlier. Finally, it's stated that she has a lot more books and would like to take them, but then she'd have no reason to go back to the Grove. And finally, we see her within a journal for the As I Have Written mechanic. While this could be her absorbing memories, to me, it feels more like her way about learning the world and universe. While Mem's goal is currently to help us restore the memories of Amphoreus, I think her personal goal is to understand the world that she comes from. Now, this could be a whole lot of nothing, and a lot of it is up to personal interpretation, but I do think there's an established rule of erudition being observers within Amphoreus. For example, Lairus. So I think Mem acting the way she does, observing the memories of Amphoreus, as well as exploring the past, observing the memories she gains, is a string to the bow. I think it works within the context of the other two girls as well, March having an established connection to remembrance and Cyrene being the destruction. So I think Mem being the final path of erudition just fits nicely and creates a nice little newt or loop. I also could be making things fit where they don't. Mem and Cyrene could exchange places in theory, or Mem could end up being a secret member of the destruction. But I hope that I've explained my reasoning well enough, and I hope that you've enjoyed the video.